see what we did on our budget for our budget EK. It's going to be kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, we're going to have a lot more videos like this, so please think about liking and subscribing, and also hit the bell so you get notifications when new videos come out.
Do it now.
Do it. All right, so let's look at what our budget is. Our budget for this car was $4,500, and we chose that amount because that's how much it costs to buy a B18C engine swap, and that would be a complete swap: engine, axles, transmission, pretty much most everything you would need. $4,500. So a K series is faster. Even the Accord motor, turns out, in our budget EG was faster than a B18C Civic. So can we beat this amount? Can we be less than $4,500? A couple of years ago, in fact, 2016, when we did budget EG, the total amount we spent was $3,285. Adjusted for inflation, that's actually $4,426, just under our $4,500 budget. So this is the list of everything you use. So let's talk about that a little bit. First off, probably a big factor is what you get your engine for. Now, we found in the salvage yard a complete Accord engine of the correct year, with transmission, with alternator, with wiring harness, charge harness, all that sort of stuff, clutch slave cylinder, and even the ECU, and we were able to purchase that for $600. Now, you may not be able to find a deal like this, but we could have had it for less, as a matter of fact, because this wasn't even a discount day. So about $400 for the whole engine, about another $200 for the transmission, and that's what it cost us. Now, there were some core charges, but I didn't include those in because we figure had this car come with an engine, we just would have gave them that stuff, or sold it off if it was good running stuff, and actually been able to recoup most of our money. So anyway, this is what we got. We did a little inspection of the engine at the salvage yard. The car was hit, and that usually gives us a good clue it was running when it was hit. Also took a peek in the oil, under the oil cap, and it looked pretty good, so we chose this engine. So anyways, all these things came with that. So next up was the CRV block bracket. $15. You can get those off of 2002 to 2005 CRV. You can also get them off the Element, same bracket. Cord shifter and cables. We were able to get, because this was a manual car, we were able to get the shifter and cables. We paid $50 for that. Next up was the Accord air fuel sensor. I had to shop around to a few salvage yards that actually pull those parts for you. I found one, a bunch of them actually, for between $30 and $35. We bought one for $35. We didn't get the secondary O2 sensor. We may do that if we decide to try to get this thing through emissions a little later on. New, those sensors are about $85, actually much less expensive than the ones for like the RSX and stuff. So $35 is what we paid. We also needed the intake air sensor. That was $9. Our particular engine did not have mass airflow, so we didn't need to get that. Next up, serpentine belt. We were not running AC, so it required a custom serpentine belt. This is the part number, and it was $23 online. Okay, so EK swap conversion harness. We actually made our own, but in the end, that didn't work out. So kind of a generic price for EK K-swap conversion harnesses is about $200. So they range from a little less than that to a little more than that, and they do have to be converted to be used with the Accord ECU. More on that in another video. Actually, we've already done a video on that, so I'll put a link down below to the video we did on how to convert a normal Honda style one to use with a K-tuner, which is the ECU we used. All right, next up was the K-tuner reflash. Now, K-tuner sells their Accord ECU two-way. They sell one way with simply a reflash. It's about $300. That's what we went with. And the other way with actually a daughter board installed, which then allows it to be tunable. That winds up being about $300 more. You can choose which way you want to go. We went with the reflash. Okay, next up was Hasport's EKK one mount kit. Now the EKK one mount kit is the one that allows you to use the stock EK subframe, which again, we're trying not to buy an EG1. We wanted to keep the budget as low as possible, so we opted for that particular kit. Now let's talk about that briefly. That means that on a K24, it's actually going to touch the hood slightly, so you're going to have to do a little bit of massaging of the structure, the skeleton under the hood in order for it not to rub. But that's the mount kit we went with. Next up is where we're right here. Hasport K-swap axles for the Accord intermediate shaft. Now, when we bought our Accord engine, it came with the intermediate shaft, and that's like 2.5 inches longer than the SI intermediate shaft. So we needed a custom axle for that particular side, which is the right axle. So Hasport actually makes that axle. So if you buy Hasport axles for that intermediate shaft, you wind up with the short axle that works well, and that was $567. Okay, next up is the K-Tune swap header. We opted for that because we found a really good deal on it. We were able to purchase that online, locally, $308. And actually, we didn't actually purchase it. We had one left over from another swap, but we found one online for $308, so that's why we have that price. You can also use a DC Sports one, and there are other companies that make them as well. But this was the name brand, inexpensive one we found, so $308. Next up with the fuel pressure regulator. We always want to go with something that isn't going to be one of those $60 ones you buy on eBay or something like that. Now, Evil Energy, we've been using their products for quite a while. My brother uses them for some of the Corvette stuff he does, so it's pretty good stuff, so we opted to use that. It was $76, pretty good price. Now, there was a bunch of miscellaneous fuel fittings and fuel hoses with that, because what we opted to do was actually make our own fuel lines. You can buy the braided stuff for, you know, that's pre-made and certain lengths, and that usually winds up being about $250. We're trying to save money there, so for about $45 in parts, using the correct type of hose, which that's this part number right here, Gates 30 R14T2, that's the stuff that's for the high pressure fuel system we have on this car. We were able to make that all for about $45. Okay, upper and lower radiator hoses. Now, there is no hose that fits this that you can buy. We've got the stock radiator, we just moved it over to the side. So what we wound up doing is going down to the parts store, finding a couple of hoses that had all the bends in the correct directions that we needed them, and then we purchased those, and it wound up costing us about $44. I'm sorry I don't have part numbers on that, but we wound up actually cutting them up and using them like that. As a matter of fact, one of the things we did was used an 1.25 inch joiner with clamps. That was $16 on Amazon, and that allowed us to cut up 2 curves so that we were able to get it to clear underneath our cold air intake and work well. If your cold air intake, if you're using a different engine, your cold air intake may not be in the way, but ours was, so that's what we wound up doing. Also, we used the Hasport radiator hose adapter, and we used that because we wanted to put a water temp sensor and a radiator fan switch in the hose adapter, and that allowed us to operate the radiator fan when everything was hot. So that was it. Now, the 2 sensors that go in that, we didn't need to purchase those. If you have a car without an engine, you will, but basically the radiator fan switch and the water temp sensor come off the stock engine. So we just pulled those off the original engine, plugged those into the hose adapter, and then the adapter harness had wiring for that. All right, next up, there were a few other things that we needed. There was a bunch of hose clamps we needed. Also, there was those silicone sleeves that I use in order to scale the inch-sized, or 1 1/8 size radiator up to 1 1/4 inch, so our radiator hoses fit properly. I'll put a link to that silicone in the show notes, but basically you only need a few inches of it, and you should be able to find it somewhere for a good price. We actually bought, I think, a 5-foot section because we do so many of these swaps. Next up were the heater hoses. For heater hoses, about $28, and those we bought online as well. These are the part numbers. One of the heater hoses has a 90-degree turn in it, and that we find works real well. We don't have to redirect the bypass valve for the heater core. We can just hook this 90-degree piece on it and then cut it to length so that it fits properly. That 90 degree actually helps keep it out of the way of the header so it's not passing by the header too closely. The other hose was an AC Delco hose, and the AC Delco hose has two different diameters. On one end it's 3/4 inch, and on the other end it's 5/8 inch, and for whatever reason, Honda has upsized one of the heater hose fittings, so you'll need that dual size hose. And it's basically a straight piece, so you connect it on, curve it to where you want it to go, and then cut it short, and it works just fine. Next up was miscellaneous wiring and connectors. We did some custom wiring on this. We actually modified the Accord charge harness in order to work in our car. So we wound up purchasing some battery terminals and some other miscellaneous plugs and things like that. Again, there'll be notes to those sources in the, links to those sources in the show notes. That's one of the big differences, by the way, between what we do and what you may be capable of doing. Unfortunately, we have all the tools we need for doing this kind of stuff, so that may kind of impede you from doing this as cheaply as we do it. All right, so next up, another good example of the same thing, the Napa brake line. For our clutch line, a lot of people sell a very long braided line for the clutch master to clutch slave, and it's actually kind of expensive. What we chose to do is use the stock lines, which came on our engine, and the stock soft line, and then we made a short little connector that went from our clutch master to the frame rail to hook it up. That piece cost us $16, actually $15 in pennies. The other tool we needed for doing the brake line was actually a flare tool. So normally when you buy the import or metric brake line, it comes with a bubble flare. We needed a dual flare, and basically, or a double flare. Basically that collapses down the bubble so that it's kind of a double wall of what looks like a normal single flare. So that tool was needed as well. Next up was the radiator cooling fan. Obviously the stock one won't fit because there's really not enough room once we move the radiator over. So we bought an aftermarket one for 29 bucks online, and we're gonna attach it using the hardware that comes with it, which basically goes through the fins and connects the fan right to the back of the radiator. Next up, if you recall, we had a lot of problem with our engine harness. Now our engine harness came with this. We tried to modify it. I still haven't finished troubleshooting it to figure out what I did wrong, because obviously I did something wrong. What we wound up doing is going and buying an Element engine harness. And this is actually an easier harness to work with to begin with, because if you have that harness, it actually already has a C101 plug. You just have to repin a few things, and then that is a lot easier to work with your adapter harness. So we were able to find an Element engine harness from an automatic. We kind of cut off all the automatic ones, added a few wires for our, basically for our VSS, or our counter speed sensor, because it didn't reach, so we had to lengthen a few wires. But that Element engine harness only charges 19 bucks. Now, that's a really good deal. I mean, I would expect to pay more than that normally, but for whatever reason, they hooked us up and we got it for 19 bucks. Last is the intake air filter. Now, there's not one specifically that works for this. If you look at all the Accord intake air filters and the TSX intake filters, which go with that particular angle on this throttle body, they all kind of go over to the side of the car, not back like a normal short ram. We were able to find something online that was kind of a more basic one, 120 bucks. We got it on eBay, made a few modifications to it, and that's what we're using as our air filter. So all in all, these are the parts, these are the prices, and our grand total was $3,288. We did it. We were way under the $4,500 we were thinking about. And here's the crazy part. This engine, if I would have found a TSX in the salvage yard with a manual transmission, it would have been the same price. I would have had a 200 horsepower motor rather than a 160 horsepower motor for the same price. So crazy. We do, by the way, look for them, and I've probably picked up, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them over the years. We did not find one for this particular swap, and I got kind of tired of waiting for it. But those deals are out there. You just got to hunt them down. I went recently on Pull and Save website, and there were a few TSXs that had come in fairly recently, and I'm betting the engines were there. We could have had more horsepower, a faster car, probably for about the same amount of money. Anyway, we're going to be wrapping this car up, trying to get it out on the road. We're going to take it for a rip. We're going to see how fast it is. We're going to compare it against a B18C powered car. So please check out that video and you can see how fast our Accord K-Swap is compared to a B18C. Anyways, guys, thanks for clicking on us and we'll catch you next time.